everyone, I hope that you're doing very well. Welcome to a new Paint With Me video. Today I'm working in my sketchbook, trying to fit in a little bit of practice in between my daily life paintings this month, and specifically I'm playing around with the Paul Rubens oil paint set. Now the video is not sponsored, but they did send me this set of colors, so first of all thank you for that, but all opinions are my own, and I was genuinely just really excited to try out some new oil paints, especially because I don't have a lot of experience with different oil paint sets other than my Mary paints, which I bought when I first started oil painting. So this set includes 20 colors, which is a lot more than my usual 8 or so that I have on my palette, and I really wanted to push myself in this practice session to use some colors that I usually wouldn't and see what I could do with that. So I thought about colors that I don't typically use in my paintings, and generally that's kind of cool tones. I tend to gravitate towards warmer colors a lot more. So a color that you never really see in my paintings is purple, and that was the inspiration behind this piece. I thought about what purple things I could paint, and I decided the figs would be a nice subject because they have both the purple, which I never use, but also some more orange and red tones in the inside, which fit my usual color palette much better, and I thought it would be overall a nice and easy way to kind of get myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. So the reference I'm using is linked in the description, and it is from a copyright-free images website because I couldn't find figs at the market to actually paint this from life, and I'm doing a lot of live painting this month anyways, so kind of switching it up with a photo is kind of nice every once in a while. But I am using almost double the amount of colors that I would typically. I think I had 14 in total on my palette here. And I think I definitely want to experiment with some limited palettes from this set, kind of split it up in sets of 5 or something, and that might be an interesting painting exercise to maybe fill some sketchbook pages with. Might make a video about it if you're interested. We'll see after the end of the month because the Strategies challenge is taking over everything, and I'm actually using these paints for quite a lot of the paintings in the challenge as well. But for now, I primed my sketchbook pages with a couple layers of white gesso. I mention this all the time at this point because I noticed at one point I was getting asked it like every single video I was posting, so sorry if I sound a bit repetitive. And then I started with a burnt sienna sketch, and then I went straight in with my warm tones first. The thing about my painting process, which I find really hard to explain sometimes, is that for the most part I think it's very intuitive, and I'm not actively like sitting down and thinking, okay, I'm going to start with this color and then I'm going to move on to that color, or like start with this piece of the painting and then move on to that other area. It's very intuitive, and I kind of get into a flow state when I do that. But I think in this case it made a lot of sense for me to start with the warm tones, just because obviously it's what I'm used to doing, and I think that really helped me be a little bit more confident later adding those purple tones. And later on I kind of got into it and I started playing around with some blues as well. The set has a lot of blues, and I think some of them are very, very beautiful, and they're different colors from the ones I've ever used in both oils and acrylics, so it's a lot of fun to try out, and I definitely want to experiment with those some more. But this was actually not my first time trying out these oil paints. So I did a painting with them before this one that you will actually see in next week's video. It was the first painting in my Strategies challenge series this month, and it was a struggle to say the least because I messed up the initial sketch and I kind of didn't frame the composition right. So then I had to go back and wipe half the painting off and repaint it. And that's when I realized that these paints dry much faster than my other oil paints. And I also use liquid as my medium usually, which also speeds up the drying time. So what ended up happening is that I spent more time than usual working on the painting, and by the time I got to the end, the painting was basically drying as I was painting it, which was very weird. But I really like the colors and the texture of these paints, and I thought that wouldn't really be a good representation of what these paints could do. So I specifically wanted to have a practice session with these to really show you what I thought these could do kind of outside of my daily paintings, even though I am also using them for those at the moment, kind of mixed with my other paints, but I'll talk more about that later. The only thing that I've really changed with them now is that I'm using linseed oil instead of liquid, which has the same effect of kind of smoothing out the paint and making it more creamy, but it doesn't speed up the drying time, and so it works much better with these paints specifically, and I haven't had any other issues with it drying too quickly. And the paint itself is actually very, very nice to work with. I really enjoy the fact that it's very pigmented. I know some people like to use like transparent colors in the paintings. I only really like to use transparent burnt sienna at the very beginning of my painting, and so I just mix that with a little bit more medium to kind of dilute it and do my initial sketch. But for everything else, I like a bit more of a creamy and kind of saturated paint, so I really enjoyed that. And at this point in the painting, I felt like the purples just needed a little bit of help with vibrancy and kind of trying to make the piece a bit more dynamic. So I started adding some blue midtones and some grey highlights, and I think that really helped. I actually really like the effect that I had on the piece, and specifically, I really enjoyed using the cobalt blue in the set, which is more of a pastel color in this set specifically, and unlike any other blue that I've used before, but I really liked it actually. And I also really liked another color that I never tried before, which was Naples yellow, and it's kind of a lighter version of yellow ochre, which is my favorite yellow, and I found myself reaching for it a lot, not necessarily just in this painting, but having it on my palette for the different paintings that I've been working on this month. I found myself reaching for it a lot, so that's been a lot of fun to use, and I've really been enjoying just using it as it is, not as much for mixing colors. Although I have heard, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard a lot of people, especially using it in gouache, talk about how they like to use it for mixing skin tones, but I haven't painted any portraits with these paints yet, so we'll have to see about that. I might report back on it eventually. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed working with these, and I think going forward I'm definitely going to keep using them in combination with my other oil paints as well. Specifically, I need to add burnt umber to the set. I don't know why it doesn't have one, but I like to use that in combination with blue to mix my dark tones like dark grays and things like that. I found it makes a much more dynamic shadow than just using black would, and so I found it a bit hard to mix such dark colors without a burnt umber, and I'm definitely gonna keep adding that to my palette from my old oil paints. This set does have a black, and I generally advise against using it because, as I said, it really desaturates your colors a lot, and I think it makes for shadows that are not very vibrant, but I did actually use a tiny bit in this painting specifically because I found that I was really struggling to mix a dark enough color for those little spaces in between the figs. So I added a tiny bit of black into my purple mixture, and in this case I think it worked all right. The painting is already very colorful on its own, and I didn't use a lot of black, but it did definitely confirm my reasoning behind not using it. Typically, I prefer to mix my own greys and dark tones without black, and I'm not going to be using it going forward, but I thought it would be interesting to try as well and to share this thought process with you. I'd be interested to know kind of what mediums you work with if you're an artist, and if you do use black in your paintings, because I used to use black when I was working with acrylics, and I still do use it for gouache, but I don't for oil paints, and I don't with watercolor either. I use Payne's Grey for that, so I'd be interested to know what your experience is with that. But with that being said, you will be able to find the link to check out these oil paints in the description, and we're nearing the end of the video. It's a little bit of a shorter one, but I am going to have so much painting content coming out this month. I'm doing 30 paintings throughout the whole month, so loads of painting content. I'm doing weekly updates, and the first installment in the series is coming out on Friday, so stay tuned for that. I'm very excited to start sharing these paintings, and if you want more real-time updates, you can follow me on my Instagram page. I'm posting daily on there, so if you want to check out these paintings kind of in advance, you can do so on there. But with that being said, I hope that you are doing very well. I wish you a lovely week, and I am going to see you very, very soon with a new video. Bye!